This is a short poem about an emotional memory. The spark. I detest that spark that flew out of the fire and burnt my mother's leg. She cried out in agony, a language we could barely interpret. Some of us could barely walk. We didn't know how to help the one who always helped us. I think of that day now, over 50 years later. I'm lying by a pool in Lanzarote. I can't say for sure what sparked that memory. I can say for certain it cut to the bone. You know how ships are often called after women? You know, it's often a she, and when there's disasters, it's mother of all wars and like that. This is a short, even shorter poem called Misogynist. Is the boss in? Could he give us a yard of a tow? The engine's after collapsing on me again. She is the bitch. Philomena's Revenge is about someone, not her real name, who was just a wild teenager. But her parents saw fit to have her receive shock treatments. And it kind of, I know some people defend shock treatment, but in her case, it really ruined her life. Philomena's Revenge. As a teenager, she was like any other. Boys, the crack smoking down the backs. Later there was talk she broke things, furniture and glass, her mother's heart. Mad at the world, the old women nod round each other's faces. But it was more than that, and for less she was punished. That weekend she didn't leave a cup alone. Every chair hit the wall. Philomena's Revenge. Soon after she was shifted and given the shocks. Round each other's faces the old women nod. Treatment, treatment, they've given her the treatment. These days she gets on with the furniture, wears someone else's walk, sees visions in glass. She's good too for getting the messages, small things, bread and milk, sometimes the paper. And closing the gate after her father drives out. She waits for his signal. He always shouts twice. Get the gate, Philo. Get the gate, girl. When I was a teenager, maybe even a little younger, somebody very close to me was in and out of what we call the battered wives' home in Galway. I think it's the distressed women's hostel, or I don't know exactly the correct title now, but that's what it was called then. And you had to go to the cruelty man first before you went there. But myself and my friend, were given a few pennies to kind of clean up the house after she left. But we were very judgmental, and we had absolutely no sympathy for her at all. And this is the poem. The woman who lived here, when she fled with the children, she left the house in such a state, with the bread gone green mould and the tea half drunk in cups. Kids' clothes, sour memories and echoes of voices loud, and that smell of something rotting. Decay, it was decay. That cobwebby smell that walked up to you in the hall and said, the woman who lived here pissed fear. We were paid to put a clean face on things, scoop up all interrupted eggshells. We were young. We cared little for something rotting. Decay it was, decay. When she fled with the children and left the house in such a state, we thought she was dirty. I dedicate this poem to a friend of mine, Leland Bardwell, the wonderful poet, and she died maybe 2 years ago. It's not about her, just dedicated to her. She is not afraid of burglars. It's lunchtime and he's training the dog again. He says to the dog in a cross voice, "Stay there." The dog obeys him. When he goes home, he forgets to leave the cross voice in the green, where he trains his dog and spits out unwoven troubles that won't fit in his head. He says to his wife, "Stay there." His wife obeys him. She sees how good he is with the dog and how the dog obeys his cross voice. She boasts to the locals, "I would never be afraid of burglars with my husband in the house." The locals, bursting for news, ask her, "Why would you never be afraid of burglars with your husband in the house?" She calls a meeting at Ayr Square for 3:30 that Saturday. Standing on a chair, wiping her hands on her apron, she explains. "One day," she says in a cross voice, "the dog disobeyed my husband and my husband beat him across the head with a whip made from horsehair. That is why I am not afraid of burglars with my husband in the house." Again, going back to when I was younger, I always heard that women got to keep the egg money. The egg money was very precious. If the woman sold the eggs, she got to keep that money. That was her money. Mirage. At least she had the egg money, and no one was going to get their paws on that. She would not have been so guarded if he had spilled a thimbleful of nice in her direction ever. But no, from day one the toughness was there. His dry lips frightened her. She knew that he had not spoken to anyone for hours, maybe days. Now it was his turn to hear the barb of his roll call. Off he went down Resentment Drive, and he let her have it about how sorry he was the day he ever laid eyes on this no-good, good-for-nothing who couldn't even boil an egg. And if she heard it often enough, and she did, she began to believe it. It made her smaller. Her shrinkage was slow to start, but in the end she felt like a speck of dirt, a flick of ash, or something in front of the eye. So, just 2 more poems. And you know how when you hear pop songs over and over, they're in your head and they're in your ear. And this poem relates to name calling as a child, and the names that were called were all Irish words for fool. While the earworm fiddled, it was no harm getting the odd clatter that would make your ear ring, a Liberty Bell. The odd kick that folded you over like Sancho Panza's ass was harder to take. A stone wall of negatives weaved its way in. An earworm fiddled with your balance. The negatives were Irish words for fool, Amadon, Onchuk, Plaika, Lebja. Most times you could shrug them off, leave fool words on the road to get run over by a trucker on the way to the maternity to see his new twins. You could juggle fool words above your head and flick them to infinity or further, except some nights when you were caught in the gap that was halfway in and out of sleep, when the long wall of negatives rocked up and roll called you every Irish word for fool. It was then and only then that you knew for sure the damage was done. And I'd like to finish with this poem, but to say, first of all, how I don't want to use the word wonderful, you know, to say it's wonderful to be here, but it's just it's tough being here, and it's tough to hear your stories. And thank you all of you for sharing today. Now, this poem is called Some People, and again, back to earlier days when we had this thing called the Back to Work course. It was an attempt to create jobs, or to let on to be creating jobs. You know, it was a governmental crapo shite thing, you know. So what they would do was, they didn't have enough phones, so they'd give us all a banana. So, you know, so you speak into the banana. And so anyway, thank you very much. Thanks all of you. Some people know what it's like to be called a cunt in front of their children, to be short for the rent, to be short for the light, to be short for school books, to wait in community welfare waiting rooms full of smoke, to wait 2 years to have a tooth looked at, to wait another 2 years to have a tooth out, the same tooth, to be half strangled by your varicose veins but you're 198th on the list, to talk into a banana on a job search scheme, to talk into a banana in a job search dream, to be out of work, to be out of money, to be out of fashion, to be out of friends, to be in for the Vincent de Paul man, to be in space for the milkman. Sorry, Mammy isn't here today, she's gone to Mars for the weekend. To be in Puerto Rico this week for the blanket man, to be in Puerto Rico next week for the blanket man, to be dead for the coal man. Sorry, Mammy passed away in her sleep, overdose of coal in the teapot. To be in hospital unconscious for the rent man, St. Jude's ward, 4th floor. To be second hand, to be second class, to be no class, to be looked down on, to be walked on, to be pissed on, to be shat on, and other people don't. Thanks a million. Thanks very much.